What does it mean to really be honest about your doubts? What are some things you have struggled to believe when it comes to the Jesus story? Or maybe there's not even a struggle. You just hear us say it and you're like, I don't really believe that. We aren't shutting the door on those. We want to be honest and engage with those. And so this is my friend Steve.
Hey, this really hits close to home for me. So I get asking tough questions. At one point in my life, I was an atheist. I walked away from my faith because I couldn't find answers for those questions. And so it's one of the things that I want to be able to help people with because there are good answers.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know this, but there are really good evidence-based answers. Some of them, the evidence is historical. Some of them, the evidence is logical, like these logical ways of looking at pieces of information and saying, well, if this is true, then I can make a good assumption that this thing next to it is true. And so we're going to ask some of the questions. Our goal isn't to answer every single question, but really just to show how we follow the evidence, how it's made a difference in our life. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing is we're going to talk about the different ways to understand and answer these questions. There's, we talk about the scientific method and in fact, I'm employed as a data scientist, so I use science all the time. However, science can't tell us much about historical events because we can't reproduce them, right? That's the core of the scientific theory is let's reproduce it. So that's where we have to start getting into logic and formal logic and making the best probability that something is true. And that's where we'll start examining the evidence and start talking about these different questions and answering them through that type of lens.
Yeah. So what types of questions? Like, why would God allow rape? Or how do you know that Jesus came back from the dead? Or how can you even know if Jesus really was a person that walked on earth? Like, these are big questions. And if you've been around the people from My Life Matters, we're always telling the Jesus story. We're always saying this matters for your life. And maybe you have some questions about that. So that's what we'll get into.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely look forward to it. Some people are afraid to ask questions, especially if you grew up in a church, which a lot of people around here do.
Yeah.
They have questions about their faith, but they're not going to ask them. They just kind of linger and gnaw in the back of your mind. You don't have to be afraid to ask those questions, because there are good answers, and hopefully we'll be able to give some of those.
Yeah, and maybe you come to some different conclusions, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to look at it. We'll be honest. We're not going to force anybody to come to the same conclusions that we have. Right. We really just want to have honest conversation, the kind of talk that really matters.
Everybody's talking. We talk what matters.